George, do you know what casual racism is?
It's when a guy's in a race, but he takes his time getting to the finish line, so everyone says, casual race is him.
No. Casual racism is when you put a white actor in brownface and have him do an Indian accent, and nobody, not the actors, not the director, not the studio heads, not the critics, or the predominantly white audience, seem to notice a problem.
It was 1986. People were less sensitive then.
Or, and this is the correct answer, white people could get away with ignoring people of color and our feelings back then. Today, that's just not as easy because we're not going to sit quietly by and put up with this bullshit.
So, they don't call people who race racists?
No!
Uh-oh. I've got a bunch of apologies to make down at the motorsports park.
Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romaka. And today we are finally discussing Short Circuit from 1986 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff.
Why do you say finally?
Because I've referenced it a bunch of times and you hadn't seen it.
Well, thank you for introducing this into my life. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome, Joe. You are welcome.
I'll be sure to let you know how pleased I am. Let me see this picture. Anyway,
you did already. You sent me a string of text messages that I did not respond to because I'm like, just thinking I might save it for the fucking show, dude. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. And Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bsky.social. Please tell your friends about us, even the warmongers, and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 1986.
1986 is the year the electronic consumer market went off the hook. Of course, we went off the hook over products that would be obsolete by the year 2000. But at the time, people had great fun. George, read this headline brought to us by the New York Times.
But the first two words in this make me want to giggle. Just because they got so obsoleted. Camcorder CD sales may double in 1986.
That's right, American sales for stereo color televisions, compact disc players, VCRs, and camcorders was $24.4 billion just the previous year. In 86, sales were expected to grow by 7% to $26.1 billion. This is not in the article, but in terms of PCs, according to the Computer History Museum, in 1986, Compaq beat out IBM to introduce the first computer on the market to use Intel's 8386 microchip. This was a 32-bit microprocessor with 275,000 transistors on each chip, capable of 4 million operations per second and 4 kilobytes of memory. I assume that was impressive.
I had to be able to draw an internal block diagram of that processor for Nuclear Power School.
Moving on, regular listeners or people who were around at the time will recall, while Americans were happy to buy up these items, the majority of which were made in Japan, they also resented it. This headline from the Statesman Journal in Salem, Oregon, is an example of what a lot of citizens were all bent out of shape about. Headline, George.
Japan shops in the U.S. for high tech.
At the time, the Japanese yen was flying high, so their companies were buying up small and financially strapped U.S. technology companies to gain access to American consumers and also to achieve market superiority on semiconductors. In other words, they were doing capitalism, which the United States under President Ronald Reagan were all for, but for some reason didn't like it when the folks from the East practiced it. I can't begin to guess why.
Racism, Joe. Racism.
Yes, that's where I was going with that. Anyway, George, tell us about Short Circuit.
Okay, this was directed by John Badham.
For the podcast, we saw his work in Saturday Night Fever, and I've seen his work in Stakeout and Another Stakeout. That's right, that was a sequel.
This was written by S.S. Wilson and Brent Maddock, who also wrote, and I've seen Batteries Not Included and Wild Wild West, and Jay Tarses, whose work I saw in The Muppets Take Manhattan, a film that was foundational to my philosophy as a human being.
Oh dear.
People's is people's, Joe.
Well, wait, made you a Christian conservative or it didn't make you a Christian conservative?
It's one of the things that put a crack in me being a Christian conservative. It's one of those seeds that was planted to grow later into something I could use to get the hell out of that mindset.
The Muppets did that for you.
Fuck yeah, man. Jim Henson, hell of a guy.
Didn't know when to take an aspirin, though.
Nope. For blurbs, IMDb says, number 5 of a group of experimental robots in a lab is electrocuted, suddenly becomes intelligent, and escapes. I'm going to quote Luke Skywalker in the newer Star Wars movies. Every word of what you just said is wrong. Electrocution means death by electricity. It did not kill the robot. He did not suddenly become intelligent. He suddenly became conscious. And he didn't so much escape as accidentally be shoved out of the facility.
Yeah, they had very curious, what's the word I'm looking for? Security.
Amazon says, an experimental military robot undergoes a sudden transformation after being struck by lightning. He develops consciousness and tries to convince his creator that he truly has become alive. That makes more sense. That's closer.
I wonder why, at least dating back to Frankenstein, people have convinced themselves, at least in fiction, that lightning can bring things to life, which of course lightning really can't. I mean, I guess they have those little pumps they put you on the pads in your heart. Maybe that's an electrical thing that gets you your heart pumping again. I guess that's electricity, but...
You are now spouting medical misinformation.
All those paddles don't electrical...
Oh, they electrical something.
Yes.
So, this is going to be George's first aid corner here. Defibrillation paddles defibrillate your heart. When your heart is in fibrillation, it is vibrating. It is not pumping, it's just kind of quivering. And what the shock does is it resets the heart so that the sinusoid rhythm can take over again and start pumping again. The defib paddles won't start a heart that is stopped. They stop a heart in fibrillation so that it can reset itself.
Okay.
But yes, they do use electricity to do that. For a robot, it would just blow fucking circuits. The premise is garbage to begin with. So, the opening sequence is a montage of controls and machining and inspection of various robot parts. We fade to a serene field of grass and flowers that is quickly trampled by some Soviet-looking tanks and personnel transports. Inside sandbag bunkers, 5 Saint robots await. Saint stands for Strategic Artificially Intelligent Nuclear Transport. The robots are humanoidish, having a head, 2 eyes, a torso, and 2 arms. Instead of legs, they have 2 independently controlled sets of tank treads with 1 stabilizing wheel in the back. On the robot's left shoulder is a laser cannon. This is science fiction, so I will forgive that even today, almost 40 years later, there is no way to generate the kind of directed energy these things will from a unit of that size. The robots, with their lasers, make quick work of the vehicles, seeming to target their fuel tanks, causing them to explode. The final shot shows us that no humans were harmed in the making of this, as there were only mannequins in the vehicles.
Yeah, I did find the whole thing rather curious of these lasers. Huge explosions! They just damage them things. Man, an explosion, I'm like, well, what are they shooting them with? I mean, let's say there was trying to aim for the fuel tank. Not all the shots were at a fuel tank. Because you could tell, like, the one with they shot the turn, or at least it seemed like that's where it was aimed, the red light of the tank. The fuel tank isn't there. I don't even know tanks, but I know that much.
No, it was aimed sort of at the back lower area of the treads. So the way the laser would work is it would sort of burn through the metal. It'd heat up and melt the metal all the way to the fuel tank, and then that heat would ignite the fuel.
No, I understand if they actually hit the fuse. I'm just saying that I don't remember those rays.
But you also don't know where the fuel tank on a tank is, Joe.
It's not in the turret. I know that.
It wasn't aimed at... Okay, whatever.
Yes, it was.
Remember how you'd seen the Third Man 1,000 times, and I was like, we'll defer to you on that one. Let's do that for this. This whole thing is a demonstration of the robot's capabilities, put on by their parent corporation, Nova Robotics. At a presentation stage, the company president, Dr. Howard Marner, touts their military value as being immune to much of what would be a threat or hindrance to human soldiers. Part of the presentation is the robots, of which they are 5, working together to mix a martini for Dr. Marner.
Which seems like an awful waste of their use.
I mean, yes, but also it's a demonstration.
The demonstrating with very expensive things just seems rather indulgent, but whatever. Anyway, who is this guy? Howard Marner is played by Austin Pendleton, who we've seen in My Cousin Vinny, and I've seen in Skidoo, Amistad, 2 Days in the Valley, The Muppet Movie, What's Up, Doc, and Catch-22.
And I've seen him in A Beautiful Mind and heard him in Finding Nemo. Sitting at a table nearby is the Nova security department led by Scroder, who obviously doesn't trust or value these robots, and whose name was absolutely chosen to sound like scrotum so that they could make that joke later. Scroder is played by G.W. Bailey. For the show, we've seen him in Police Academy. Joe and I have both seen him in Police Academy 2, and I've also seen him in Police Academies 3, 4, 5, 6, and Mission to Moscow as well as Mannequin.
You know, I didn't remember when we were discussing Police Academy. I didn't realize you just saw the whole filmography of Police Academy.
It's a staple of my childhood, Joe.
You really loved those movies. You just kept coming back. And worse they got, didn't stop you.
It's mostly my cousin's influence. Running the robot controls is the right-hand man of the guy who designed the Saints, Ben Jabatuya.
Ben Jabatuya is played by Fisher Stevens in Brownface. We saw him in The Brother from Another Planet. Wasn't in Brownface in that.
Nope.
And we saw him in Hackers. He wasn't in Brownface for that. I also just saw him in Asteroid City, and also The French Dispatch, Motherless Brooklyn, and Hero.
And I've seen him in the original Super Mario Brothers movie, and heard him in Isle of Dogs. Now, about him in Brownface. Number one, he has said on the record that he shouldn't have done that, and that wasn't okay. So he has apologized for that. He did spend 4 months in India prepping for that. And people in India, when they saw this movie, thought that he was an actor thought he was a different person that they knew of, like a different actor from India. So I don't know what it says that he was convincing in Brownface. I don't know if that makes it better.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, but it's a true.
All I know is, rather than send an actor to India, hire an Indian actor.
Yeah.
Problem solved. They exist, you know. They got plenty of them.
Originally, the character wasn't even supposed to be Indian. They literally made him Indian to make it funnier.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Just his name, Jabatuya. Get it?
Yeah, his name is a fucking pun. Before long, the sky opens up. The humans all go indoors while the robots head to their debriefing section.
I just also, going just a little bit back to the brownface thing very quickly. My God, I in the cold open, I mentioned like how nobody cared back then. They just thought they could do whatever they want. I look at some of the responses to this film, and there's still people going, "Oh, I love this picture." So what? No mention of the fact that this is in the movie.
When I was a kid and I saw this, I didn't know who Fisher Stevens was. I just thought that was an Indian guy.
You were a child. I'm talking about adults watching back at this movie.
Right, but if they were children when they first saw it too, it's not clocking for them. Unless they've read about it.
Oh, give me a break. They know who Fisher Stevens is at this point. And the controversy's been out there. All they had, just amazing. All the people, I just love this film as a kid, blah, 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 which is fine, whatever. You loved it as a kid, fine. But for God's sake, don't pretend this isn't there. Just like brownface. There's no history there I have to confront. Let's just keep going on.
To be clear, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I'm not surprised.
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised either.
Inside, Marner asks Ben where his robot-creating genius buddy is. Ben reports that he's currently in the bathroom and intends to stay there. Marner calls bull on that and sends Ben to get him. That guy is Newton Crosby, PhD, and he's currently in the robotics lab. I will describe what he's doing as this. He is teaching a robotic hand to play a song on a keyboard. That's what the audience can shorthand it to. As an instrumentation and controls guy who has automation programming experience, I'll say that what he'd actually be doing is way, way more complicated than that, since he's able to use voice commands in natural language to do so.
I get the impression that we're supposed to think, oh, what a fun guy.
Newton Crosby is played by Steve Guttenberg, and for the show we've seen him in Boys from Brazil, The Man Who Wasn't There, Police Academy, and for an unaired test episode, 3 Men and a Baby. We've both seen him in Police Academy 2, and I've seen him in Police Academy 3, 4, and 3 Men and a Little Lady, the sequel to 3 Men and a Baby.
You really don't let those films go, do you? Police Academy, 3 Men and a Baby, and 3 Men and a Little Lady. You like your sequels.
Apparently. Ben finds Newton and convinces him to come upstairs and hobnob with the assembled. Newton expresses frustration with the militarization of the technologies he's invented. He leaves parting instructions to the hand that emotively waves goodbye of its own volition to continue practicing the last bars of the song it's working on. To be clear, nothing that sophisticated exists today almost 40 years later, and if we did actually have artificial intelligence, this could exist. In fact, if we had actual AI, this probably would exist already. That's for me to say that ChatGPT is not artificial intelligence and that we should absolutely stop calling it that.
What ChatGPT is it culls all this other information and then puts it out there for you.
Yeah, it's a fancy search algorithm.
Basically. Okay, you don't like the militarization of your objects. Who sold these things to them? What business did you go working in? Did he not know Nova would sell his stuff and blow up people? If that's not what he wanted, he could have went in another area.
I mean, guys got to eat.
So he could have went to computer games. We see how sophisticated his stuff is. He could have gone anywhere.
Yeah, but he's not doing computer games. He's doing hardware interfaces. He's doing robotics, not computer programming.
Okay, whatever. My point is he could go someplace else. He didn't have to work there.
In the 80s, there weren't a whole lot of robotics outfits. Like, I'm just saying, it's the problem is capitalism, Joe. The problem is that people who can do amazing things get their shit hijacked because they need a paycheck to eat.
You just said he's writing technology that's 40 years ahead of its time. He does not have to work, people. He doesn't have to work with anybody he doesn't want to work with. Not with that talent.
Outside, next to a generator, 2 engineers are checking out the robot's systems. Saint number 5 is hooked up to the generator when lightning strikes the high-tension lines nearby, sending an arc traveling to the robot. It jumps, sparks, and flops around until it's left smoking. Yet its systems check out, so the engineers send it off to be disarmed.
That is accurate, right? That's exactly how things work. It gets hit by electricity, and then it parts and snaps and all that sort of stuff, and then suddenly it just keeps working.
No, that wouldn't happen. That's not how electronics work. The robots enter the building following yellow and black striping on the ground. Saint number 5, or number 5 as it'll be called, forgets what it's doing and runs into a wall repeatedly. Then it plays with light switches, observing the cause and effect. It gets distracted by the dangling extension cord on a coffee service robot and begins to follow it before a trash-moving robot sideswipes it into an elevator out of the building and onto a pickup truck loaded with trash bins and waste drums.
You'd think a place that sophisticated would have, one, cameras all over the place, so they can see literally what happens as opposed to what we see how they figure it out later. And also, someone should be watching these things. Why are they just allowed to just run around by themselves?
Well, that's the whole point of automation, is you automate it so that nobody has to watch it.
But they're still working on them. They're not fully developed.
What I'm going to say is they're just not that great at it. Like, they're great at making the autonomous things, they're not great at coordinating them. Upstairs, the presentation has become a party, and Newton does hobnob while still maintaining his peacenik attitude.
Originally, I had non-military purposes in mind. I designed it as a marital aid.
You know, that line makes me think. And now when I text you about this film, I said it was a kid's movie, which I thought it was, but...
It's not.
Yeah, but with all the cursing in it, it's clearly not aimed at kids.
So, real quick though, what cursing do you remember?
There's cursing through it. There's like, say bullshit and...
Bullshit and ass.
They also say fuck at some point.
No, they don't.
I think they do.
Nope, he says this little fart of a robot.
The point is there's like adult language here, which is obviously not appropriate for a kid's film. So was it aimed at teenagers, I guess?
No, it was aimed at fucking adults.
You think it was an adult movie?
It was a comedy aimed at adults.
I don't think it was aimed at adults.
Every movie is aimed at adults. Adults are the ones with disposable incomes. The remaining 4 Saint prototypes arrive at the party, and Marner immediately notices that number 5 is missing. He tells Ben to call security and to stay calm! Schroeder orders the site locked down, but the truck with number 5 makes it through security before that call is answered.
By the way, the reason I also thought it's a kid's movie is because both you and when I read the other people reviewing and taking a look back at it, all of them were young. All of them were like kids when they saw this movie, which I presume they saw it on TV and not actually in the theaters.
Yep, rented it from the VHS store.
So likely, it may not have been aimed at kids.
But kids liked it, yeah.
Yeah.
In the lab, Newton, Ben, and Marner converge on a control console where Newton tries all of the remote shutdown and recall codes that he can, to no avail. They activate number 5's homing beacon, which should have been on by default, morons, and see that number 5 is outside of their secure perimeter. Number 5 notices a butterfly and mimics the wing beats using its eyebrow flaps. According to the IMDb trivia, those flaps were insisted on by Sid Mead, who designed the robots so that the robot could give more emotional expressions. A design criteria was that every part of these robots had to have a functional military purpose, so they justified the flaps as being camera coverings.
By the way, in that scene, since obviously you've seen this film dozens of times, why would they have not seen him? Because he's kind of obviously, I thought his head was kind of high up there when he was looking at the butterfly. It's weird that neither the driver seems to notice by looking in his rearview mirror or the military personnel outside seem to notice this thing that they're, at least, well, the military guys are at least looking for.
They didn't know to be looking for it yet. The word hadn't gone out.
Still, it's like kind of would stand out. What's this $1 million machine at the garbage for?
The only thing I could say is that the bins and the drums were if you're in the truck driving, they were on the left side. So he was on the right side. The left side is the side near the guard shack. He was kind of a little bit surrounded by them. He had he was on whatever. I don't want to think that hard about this movie, Joe. When the butterfly takes off, number 5 crashes off of the truck, landing against a fence for a cow pasture covered in trash. As security forces rush to where they see number 5 on a map, Newton and Ben continue sending commands and monitoring feedback. Number 5 sends back an image scan of a Dr. Pepper ad and repeatedly asks for input.
Well, that's another thing. Boy, so much product placement is in this picture. It's crazy.
Oh my God, yes. Holy shit, yes.
I mean, it's just wild and blatant, too. I mean, he's literally watching commercials.
Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too? Can of soup, a meal in itself. This is where we finally hear him speak, so we'll introduce the guy who voiced number 5, Tim Blaney, who I've heard in Flight of the Navigator, Short Circuit 2, Men in Black, and Men in Black 2.
Oh, and then I've also heard him in Men in Black. I didn't realize he was in that.
Mm-hmm. Number 5 heads down the road, and Nova Security catches up with him. He escapes by jumping off of a bridge and deploying a parachute. He lands on the roof of a snack truck, driven, owned, and operated by Stephanie Speck, who is surprisingly, for a movie with brownface and as much juvenile masculinity as this film has, not a manic pixie dream girl.
She is, however, very odd.
She is an odd duck, yes.
According to what's written on the side of her truck, this is what she sells as snacks. Grains, herbs, yogurt, honey, and fruits. Who goes to a food truck to buy grain and herbs? Who gets honey as a snack? Later, we will see that she has a kitchen in that truck. What the hell did she cook?
I don't know, but you can put grains, herbs, honey, and fruits in your yogurt.
Okay.
That just sounds delicious right now.
Then that's part of your yogurt. That's weird. It's a separate item she says you can buy. It's not like a menu where it's got yogurt and it'll have grains and blah, blah in it. It's literally grains, period, herbs, period, yogurt, period, honey, period, fruits, period.
Okay.
By the way, she's got as we'll find out later, she's got a bunch of animals she needs to feed. How is she supporting herself or them selling this stuff? I have no idea.
I guess in that geographic area, there's a lot of people who want grains, herbs, yogurt, honey, and fruits.
I guess.
Stephanie Speck is played by Ali Sheedy.
Right. So in Bad Boys from 1983, not the Bad Boys with Will Smith.
Yeah.
This one is with Sean Penn. It was about kids in prison. I'd forgotten that film existed, so I was really surprised. I thought, oh, Bad Boys, I remember this. Oh, was Ali Sheedy in that? I completely forgot.
And I've seen her in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
And we both saw her in The Breakfast Club.
She notices the bump of number 5 landing on the roof, but doesn't think much of it. And then she finishes her commute home. When Stephanie gets home, she finds her ex-boyfriend, Frank, trying to capture her 3-legged dog to sell to a medical research company. That's a believable storyline. She chases him off. Frank is played by Brian McNamara, who I saw in Gone in 60 Seconds. And thankfully, that's the last cast member we have to introduce in this film. Once he's gone, we learn that the local law enforcement types are trying to shut down Stephanie's home-based animal rescue situation. She's got cats, dogs, chickens, ducks, ferrets, skunks, and raccoons. So she's not a manic pixie dream girl, but she could be a Disney princess.
Can you imagine the stench that must be in that poor woman's apartment? I guess she walks the dogs. The cats have their own cat. She has a bunch of cats. How many cat bugs could she have? Then where did the chickens go?
Well, the chickens were in a coop.
Then the ducks.
The ducks were outside.
The skunk is in her house, for God's sake.
Okay, skunks, believe it or not, you can keep a skunk as a pet. Like, if they're not afraid of you, they're not going to spray you. If you're following like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're in pretty safe territory.
But would they get it wrong with these other animals?
As long as everybody's getting their needs met, they're not going to give a shit. None of them are like, cats are obligate carnivores, but again, they'd rather eat out of the bowl because it's easier than having to chase something down and kill it. Ben and Newton start loading up a utility truck with tracking and diagnostic equipment and are excited to be getting out of the lab. Now is a good time to point out that Ben's character mangles a lot of English cliches, a well that they repeatedly draw from.
Oh, God.
That the film could have done without. Also, this is where the juvenile locker room-esque dialogue about women starts.
Newton, you know what is out there in the great outdoors? Girls. With brassieres and legs. You have a working knowledge of girls?
No, but I read about them.
Well, then, maybe I can furnish you with some schematic drawings.
All right.
What human beings are these? I would have believe them. Those two came from another planet. I mean, these guys must be in their 30s, it looks like, right?
Well, Steve Guttenberg, he's been, looking that age for his entire life.
True. But they're young men, so yeah, they're going to be horny, but I think they know enough about women. The conversations they have is so unrealistic. Like, nobody talks like this. The kids in Stand By Me have a better idea about women than these grown-ass men who have these big, important jobs, presumably bringing down huge salaries. And then they talk about, oh, women with bazaars and legs. Oh, God, I shouldn't even be trying to do that accent.
Trying to do your imitation of a white man doing brownface.
Yes.
It's nighttime now, and Stephanie hears a ruckus out in her snack truck. Thinking it's Frank, she goes to investigate and is shocked to find what she believes to be an alien inside, trashing her truck.
Oh my God, I knew they'd pick me. I just knew it.
Yeah, lady. Number 5 is breaking, touching, squeezing, spilling, and tossing things in a very juvenile way, kind of what a toddler would do if it weighed a ton, cost $11 million in 1986 money, and had a functional directed energy weapon on its back.
None of those things look like grain or fruits. No, I remember the fruits being indoors. I don't remember being in the truck, though.
She figures out, just because that's what's advertised doesn't mean that's the only thing that she sells.
Well, it should be. Otherwise, how would people know what to buy?
Usually when you get closer to it, there are menus and shit.
Nah, I checked. I didn't see.
That's not the side with the drop-down counter thing.
Yeah, it's had 2 little whiteboards on the side of the truck. You've seen this movie before, so you should know.
Yeah, but I wasn't trying to pick it apart.
Well, you shouldn't have, because that's your job. What do you think we're doing right now?
No, I mean, when I saw it a million times before, I wasn't trying to pick it apart. I was more focused on the relationship dynamics in the brownface than I was on the minutia of her fucking snack truck. I'm not saying you're wrong to point it out. I'm saying we're spending way too much fucking time talking about it.
It's all of a kind, fella.
She figures out some of its basic directional commands and invites it into her home. Once inside, she gives number 5 a crash course in naming things like floors, ceilings, lights, music, animals, etc. This is a very list-centric movie. She hands it an encyclopedia and it blazes through, memorizing and demanding more input. So she hands it the next volume, and on it goes, into the night.
A lot of things, I guess, date this movie. Obviously. But one of the worst is probably her having an encyclopedia. The whole set of them. How young people watch this movie and go like, what's an encyclopedia? What? They had them in books?
In 2001, I bought a set of encyclopedias from a traveling salesman.
Did you?
Yep.
Wow. But still, 20 years ago? 22?
Yep. Once all the books are read, number 5 goes around showcasing its new knowledge and basically wrecking the house in the process. She stops the adolescent rampage by turning on the TV, and if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then having 2,400 words per second plus the information value of the associated audio sent his way is the best input ever. Too bad he didn't malfunction in the internet age.
Indeed.
Come morning, Stephanie has somehow been able to sleep with a weird alien robot in her living room watching TV. She brings it outside and shows it the sun. Number 5 shows an ability to see shapes in the clouds the way we do and calls Stephanie beautiful. And that's another thing the movie didn't need. The $11 million militarized marital aid forming opinions on the aesthetic beauty of a species he's not a member of.
Yeah, and he does that again later. I mean, a couple of times actually in the film. And it's like, okay, so he got the knowledge and suddenly knowledge made him a heterosexual man? That's pretty much what the film is saying.
I will make an argument that yes, that's exactly what happened in a little while. With a possible reasoning behind it that kind of makes sense.
Okay.
And from here on out, I will call number 5 a he because he definitely develops a male-type personality.
Oh, for sure.
Beasley, the 3-legged dog, starts barking at him and he backs away until he falls off the deck and into a chicken coop a la Weekend at Bernie's, except no chicken coop. But he does fall through the banister the same way. From here, Stephanie sees his stamped Saint nameplate designated him as belonging to Nova Robotics. She becomes agitated, as one does when they feel like they've been duped.
Something just occurred to me. They were worried, okay, so they don't know what's going on with the machine, so maybe their concerns are unnecessary. But the guys are at least concerned that the number 5 might start shooting anything that moves. And yet, when he's ostensibly attacked by the dog, his thing is to move away from it rather than confront it. which, I don't know. Well, I guess it's malfunctioning, so it's going against its programming?
Well, we'll get to it later, but part of it becoming conscious was it developing a moral compass.
Oh, I understand not to kill, but still, that doesn't mean you move back and fall off the, the thing. You just stand there and go away, rough or something.
Stephanie finds Nova in the phone book and calls them up. She gives them number 5's location, and they play coy about any kind of reward. She hangs up on them when she sees number 5 scaring her animals. She tells number 5 that Nova is coming to disassemble him for diagnostics. He gets distracted by a grasshopper. He improbably mimics the grasshopper's jump and accidentally lands on the poor bug.
What, you mean that's not possible?
Yes, Joe. I think it's impossible for a robot with that kind of equipment for locomotion to jump vertically.
Why would you say that? That looks perfectly plausible to me.
This, more than the lightning strike, arguably is the inciting incident because it's where number 5 stops seeing himself as a robot.
Error. Grasshopper disassemble. Reassemble.
Huh?
Reassemble.
I can't reassemble him. You squashed him. He's dead.
Dead?
Right. Dead as a doornail.
Reassemble, Stephanie. Reassemble.
I know you don't understand. But when you're dead, you're dead. That's just the way it is. Dead is forever.
Squash. Dead. Disassemble. Dead. Disassemble. Dead!
So 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
1, he read the entire encyclopedia and there wasn't an entry on death.
Did we have that with another movie in which someone got an encyclopedia or some book and for some reason?
Fifth Element.
Okay, right. They missed war somehow. He's a fast reader. He probably just went right past death and didn't even notice it.
And number 2, at this point in the movie, the early points in the movie, Stephanie vacillates, like after she finds out that he's a Nova robot, not an alien, she vacillates wildly between treating him like a child or being just fed up with him. She would not make a good mother, is what I'm saying.
Her character is strictly written to be the girlfriend for Steve Gutenberg.
I don't think she has her own motivations, though.
True, but I still think, well, we see by the end of the movie.
Actually, I would argue that she's written to be the girlfriend for number 5.
Well, they can't have that. So that's not going to happen.
He's got that fucking arm that comes out of the middle, man.
And he is into women, but still, I think she's there for Steve Gutenberg.
Number 5 bolts to Stephanie's truck, somehow gets into the driver's seat, reads the manual, and takes off. By the way, the practical effects in this were fucking spectacular. Like, they were very well done. The way they did the encyclopedias and the driver's manual is they used the compressed air hose to blow the pages.
I don't drive, so I don't know this, but do people keep their driver's manual in their car?
Yes.
Okay. What do you need it for? You already know how to drive.
It's not the manual for how to drive, it's the manual for the car. It's the manual for the giant multi-$1,000 piece of equipment that you have.
But the way it's presented in the film is...
I know the way it's presented in the film, Joe. I will say this. He has tank treads. I guess maybe he could intuit some of how his locomotion works and apply that to the car.
I mean, no, it wouldn't be that unreasonable for a machine this smart to be able to figure out how to drive. It's just that he does it looking at the manual, that's all. That's the funny part.
He had to read the manuals to figure out how to turn the car on. Stephanie is able to grab onto and enter the truck, and it becomes a mildly harrowing race to nowhere, resulting in the wrecking of her livelihood and ending just before they go over a cliff. And here's where the central conflict of the film is explicitly identified. Number 5 is afraid of Nova disassembling him because...
Number 5 is alive.
This reminds me, in real life, wasn't there some sort of reporter was checking out some AI thing? AI said that it was in love with him and that he should divorce his wife and then that it was alive and all this stuff. So it's reasonable for people to go like, well, you say that. We don't actually think you're alive. Because computers will say back things to people.
Yeah, but the rest of the movie is this robot trying to convince its creator that it is alive. So we can't really squash it here. Otherwise, the movie ends.
No, I'm just simply saying, just made me, that thought just popped into my head like, oh, just saying that doesn't really mean anything.
Newton and Ben are the first to arrive and doubt Stephanie's story about number 5 having been the maniac behind the wheel. Eventually, after much coaxing from Stephanie, number 5 comes out to tell them that he's alive, but is interrupted by the arrival of Schroeder and an army of Nova security forces. A firefight ensues, with number 5 blowing up boats on a dock near where the security forces are before those forces start actually hitting him with their bullets.
Now, did he also hit gas tanks on those boats?
Yes, that's what would cause them to explode like that.
So he knows exactly where to aim every time. Interesting, okay.
Newton runs into the field of fire, forcing Schroeder to call for a ceasefire. Newton, against number 5's protestations, switches the robot off. He tells Ben to stay with him and not allow anyone to switch his memory circuits off. This is the meet cute for Newton and Stephanie, too.
You can call me if you want to.
Call you?
Just let me know if number 5's okay.
Oh. Yeah, okay, maybe I will.
Well, don't do me any favors, Jack.
They're going to have a long, healthy relationship.
Listen, I think these are two very attractive people. I don't think they have any chemistry at all.
No, they don't.
That's number 1. Number 2, call you? Like, I just met you. Really? You think she's hitting on you or something, dude? And also, he never gives her the number. No one has anybody's number. Although she get called Nova, I guess.
She does call Nova.
She does more than once, yeah.
Now, the best explanation I can come up with for what happens next is that the memory circuits are on the same power bus as the motor controls for the head, which is why Newton was able to, as Stephanie says, paralyze him, but he's able to use his eyebrow flaps to drop a wrench onto his power button to turn his body back on. He replaces his own arm from a spare parts cage in the truck before Ben and the driver notice. They bail out of the truck and number 5 commandeers the vehicle after disposing of the driver's seat. While driving, number 5 notices that there's a display showing his position and connects that with his tracking device. He pulls it off and tosses it into the bed of a passing pickup truck where it lands in a couple's groceries. Before long, that couple runs into a Nova roadblock.
I hope you took the grass out of the glove compartment.
I've seen this movie 1,000 times, but I hadn't seen it since I was a child. I didn't know what grass was back then, so when I heard that this time, I could appreciate the joke and I laughed my ass off.
What do you think they said at the time? Or you don't even remember?
It was just, I heard the words and it was like, why would he have fucking grass in his glove compartment?
Gotcha, okay.
Must be something adults do and I don't understand. Like 1,000 other things adults do that I don't understand. Back at Nova, Marner, with Schroeder's influence, is unconcerned about the miraculous technological possibilities of number 5's accidental consciousness and tells Newton and Ben to stay at their terminals from now on and to let Schroeder handle this.
Yeah, that's another thing for a guy. Yes, he later says, I'm not a scientist anymore, I'm a businessman. But honestly, this thing may be conscious. Why would you not want to get it back to you unharmed and figure out what the hell's going on? You will make more money with this than anything military.
Mm-hmm. After dealing with a bunch of reporters at her front door, Stephanie decides to take a bath. Who should waltz in but number 5, badly disguised as a shrubbery. Number 5 tells her that she has nice software. I guess an argument could be made that his personality is a result of the input he was given, which was largely written or programmed by men, and thus would have some toxic masculinity in it. Through that lens, this movie becomes prophetic when we consider what happened with the whole Microsoft chatbot going onto the internet and becoming a Nazi.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, this machine is not designed to be hidden. People would notice it. And yet somehow she has all these reporters outside her door and the thing just gets in with no problem. No one sees it sneak in.
Mm-hmm. Back at Nova, Ben and Newton sneak into the facility garage and try to take a utility truck to go find number 5. Marner stops them at gunpoint, but Newton calls his bluff and they escape unscathed.
That really seemed an unnecessary scene.
Uh-huh. Number 5 guilts Stephanie into letting him stay the night. Talk about fucking toxic masculinity, like... Which, by the way, that is an actual problem with the idea of AI, is any AI that human beings build is going to have some of our biases in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
So we can't trust AI to make necessarily better decisions than we can until we learn how to counter-program our own biases.
Sure.
Then, director John Badham gives himself a hand job. having number 5 and Stephanie reenact the couple's dance sequence from Saturday Night Fever, which he also directed.
Besides the fact that, wow, is Saturday Night Fever inappropriate but used in any way in this picture, you would swear it's a movie about dancing if you just saw this clip. And we both know, ooh boy, is it not.
I went into our Saturday Night Fever episode thinking it was a movie about dancing because all I knew of it was what I saw in this movie.
Oh Lord. But did you, when they have that whole dance thing, and I can see what you're saying, it's better, the relationship between her and number 5, didn't it seem sort of weirdly sexual?
Yes.
Which, like, were we supposed to, what were we supposed to get out of that thing? She is not going to fuck the robot. It's not that type of movie, so why is this here?
It was designed as a marital aid.
It was designed as a marital aid. What, the laser? What was that supposed to do?
Hair removal.
Okay.
The morning after, number 5 follows a recipe for cooking breakfast in a very literal way without understanding context so as to be funny. Somehow this results in a perfectly cooked breakfast for Stephanie.
That's true.
Right after we watch him fucking it all up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's like a mess. And somehow when it's all prepared, looks okay.
But she doesn't have time for that because Frank has shown up. He's offering her 1/5 of a $25,000 reward for number 5's capture. She tricks Frank into telling number 5 what he's doing, and number 5 bolts. Stephanie tackles Frank, delaying him by a few seconds before he can give chase. When he gets outside, number 5 has a Haynes guide to Frank's car and has dismantled it into neatly organized piles of parts on Stephanie's lawn.
Quick question, how long was he outdoors?
Not long enough to do that, but it was fucking funny.
Why didn't you just use his laser? That would have made more sense.
Because that wasn't as funny. Number 5 is a robotic Roger Rabbit.
Was this one comparing to someone? I got Robin Williams after a while. That's who I thought they were ripping off.
Except he's not. He's Curly from the Three Stooges as far as personality goes.
No, they definitely show that as being an influence to him, but just the way he talks.
And the fact that when he laughs, he goes, nyuk, 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 nyuk. Like, he adopts a lot of that personality, like the prankster personality. There's another time where it comes up, or a couple more times it comes up.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, but when he's doing those impressions of all these actors, I don't know. It came off as very Robin Williams to me.
It didn't come out that way to me. I wanted to save it for the conclusions. I can't. So Robot becomes sentient, and it's driven to do bits. Its behavioral model becomes sketch comedy. Only in the movies. Frank tries to fight him over this, but number 5 non-fatally lasers his clothes off and Frank runs away out of the movie. Stephanie reaches out to Newton through Marner, who passes on the message that she wants to meet to convince him that number 5 is alive. Marner promises, Pinky swears, hand over the heart, that Schroeder won't be there. All that over the radio. None of that happened. Newton shows up at the Red Lion Inn, a place where Frank used to take her, begging the question of why the fuck she would want to go back there. He still goes there.
That's true, you're right. So why is she still going there? But I guess she does know the people there because she does say hi to the bartender.
Yeah, the bartender's like, hey, good to see you again. But also, what's that bartender's relationship to Frank? Is she going to call? She won't, and I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I don't fucking know that.
Also, it's very weird because she doesn't question who these other... She's actually a regular there, and she's gone there with her ex. So she should know pretty much all the staff, and she doesn't notice this new guy.
Yep.
Who's there.
Serving food, yeah.
Who's going to turn out later to be...
Well, we'll get there in a second. She's hidden number 5 in the woods badly because unbeknownst to her and Newton, 3 of the other saints are hunting him down. Number 5 manages to outwit and takes them out of commission. And again, he does bits during this.
He does, 100%. Unnecessarily so, clearly for the audience.
Axe, rope, 3/4 inch double braid, perfecto. And then he stops and just escaped robot, fight for his life, film at 11. Who the fuck are you doing? What is in your programming that would make you do that? I am fascinated.
Who are you talking to? Why is this machine having a thought that it's expressing out loud? Just do your thing.
In the restaurant, Stephanie has Newton's ear and eyes, and eventually he has her trust too.
Why?
Good question, Joe. She offers to take him to number 5 when Schroeder and his goons show up. Again, some of them were disguised as workers in the bar, and the bartender just accepted this. I hope he got tipped badly.
She should have noticed. Who are these new people? I've never seen these people at this bar before. This place I regularly frequent.
So immediately, number 5 bursts in and rescues Stephanie. They drive off with Nova security on their heels. Number 5 gets an idea and lasers a tree down behind them, cutting off the Nova pursuit. Furious, Scroder and Newton yell at each other when the three saints from before show up, having been reprogrammed to mimic the Three Stooges.
Why?
For the Roger Rabbit reason, Joe.
There's no need for him to do that.
Because it's funny.
Because it's funny.
You mean you could take your arm out of that cuff at any time? No, not at any time. Only when it was funny. That's what happens.
By the way, you're right. Stephanie's not a magic drink. I definitely think she's just there for Steve Guttenberg to fall in love with.
And rescue some animals.
Yeah, I think the rescue animals just show, she's a good person because she's rescuing animals.
Number 5 is not human enough to do human things. So he needs a human analog for him in the world. She takes in lost creatures. He's a lost creature. So he fits into her worldview as something that she can, lavish her messiah complex on. That's my psychoanalysis of the situation.
Okay. It's as good as any other.
Number 5 and Stephanie drive until they run out of gas. Stephanie's ethical compass wavers for a moment, only to be steadied by the checks notes robot designed to infiltrate with and trigger nuclear weapons.
Right. She says, why don't you just
burn their butts with your laser?
Yeah.
Burn? No, disassemble. But number 5, come on, they deserve it. That's not good reasoning. True, but not good reasoning.
You, meanwhile, would have done it.
Yep. Number 5 decides to do a little problem solving himself. He tracks down Newton and Ben and has Ben get out of the van. He kidnaps Newton and brings him back to where he and Stephanie camped out. All night long, Newton and number 5 go through exercises and queries to determine if number 5 is indeed alive. Newton asks who told number 5 that it is wrong to kill. Number 5 says he told himself. Checkmate, theists. Then, just after daybreak, with Crosby holding a cup of coffee and almost spilling it and falling asleep on his feet.
Now listen close. There's a priest, a minister, and a rabbi. They're out playing golf, and they're trying to decide how much to give to charity. So the priest says, well, we'll draw a circle on the ground, we'll throw the money way up in the air, and whatever lands inside the circle, we'll give to charity. The minister says, no, we'll draw a circle on the ground, we'll throw the money way up in the air, and whatever lands outside the circle, that's what we give to charity. The rabbi says, no, we'll throw the money way up in the air, and whatever God wants, he keeps.
Oh, I get it.
Newton cites this spontaneous emotional response as proof of life. Whatever. If we were going to go that route, then earlier when he tied your shoelaces together as a practical joke, which is only ever done for one's own amusement, that should have counted.
Also, is that proof of anti-Semitism? I mean, what does that joke actually mean? Because it's the rabbi who wants to keep the money. Get it?
So I think it's actually the other way around. I think the rabbi is saying we give all of the money to charity and God can hold on to whatever he wants to hold on to, but we're going to give all of this to charity. We're not going to keep any for ourselves.
Oh, okay. I thought the whole circle thing was that them keeping it, not giving it to charity. And they'll throw it up in the air and then let God decide where the... Oh, I don't know. I don't want to go over the joke. Let's move on.
Yep, and even Newton Crosby's like, I think I fucked up the punchline. But again, number 5 tied his shoelaces together earlier. Why? Why would he do that if that was not his own emotional gratification doing that?
Because the script says so. Now you got your answer.
Not long after, Scroder, the entire Nova security force, and even some army helicopters show up. Newton tries to talk Marner out of this, and while that's going on, Scroder has his goons detain Newton and Stephanie, pulling them away from the van and out of the line of fire.
Which is actually pretty amazing considering the way the character is written. He seems like someone who totally would shoot them as well.
No, he doesn't. When Newton ran out in front of the fire earlier, he was like, hold your fire. Stop firing.
No, and he did. No, I'm saying, but
like
to me, at least, the character strikes me as someone who would go, keep shooting.
But he doesn't. He's a security guy. He cares about security. He's not like, he doesn't trust the fucking robot. But he's not a murderer. Like that's the thing. Like he's written to be the bad guy, but he's not actually a bad guy.
Well, he's not that bad, at least.
Number 5 bursts from the back of the van and makes a run for it. He can't outrun the helicopter and is blown to smithereens. Marner fires Scroder for destroying what he was told to capture. Newton quits, but is still allowed to take a Nova utility van for some fucking reason.
That's right, I didn't even think about that.
He and Stephanie watch in horror and disgust as Nova security forces round up pieces of number 5 to play with. The way eagles will play with the heads of seagulls that they've killed.
Yes, exactly that. as you were watching this movie, were you under the impression that Mariner could fire Schroeder? Because I wasn't.
Mariner's the president of the company.
Still.
He can fire anybody.
I know, but to me, it just came off like he had a different job.
No, but he's Nova Security.
The way he talked to Schroeder, it didn't seem like that was his boss. I'm saying, sorry, Schroeder talked to Mariner, that didn't seem like that was his boss.
Yeah, that's why he got fired.
Eventually, but he talked shit to him from the very beginning of the movie.
So Newton and Stephanie drive off. Before long, number 5 appears from the floorboards in the back. Newton quickly figures out that number 5 made a duplicate of himself from the spare parts in the van, and that's what got blown up. Something ship of Theseus. They decide to go live on some land that Newton inherited in Montana, and Stephanie has a mind to turn it into a proper animal rescue. The end.
Okay, what has happened in this entire film that would make this woman give up her life in Oregon to go live with this man she just met in Montana? Yes, she may care about that machine, but she's going to be what they seem like. What happened? Suddenly made them a couple, because that's what seems to be implied. She's going to go live with him.
Well, he's got huge tracts of land.
Does have tracts of land.
And she's got animals that need places to live. I could see a very utilitarian reason for them to hook up.
I guess. All right. Does this still work?
I would love to say this still works, but I won't. It's for its time, brownface aside, toxic masculinity aside, the practical effects for this film and the engineering that went into this film were fucking spectacular. And I still think it's funny. I think that him doing bits is funny, but it's not. This is definitely science fiction, and it could have still worked if it wasn't for the brownface and toxic masculinity, because that's what aged it more than anything. You can still have a stupid sci-fi, right? We can enjoy Red Dwarf today because it doesn't have fucking Fisher Stevens in brownface.
Looking at it from the perspective of kids, I can see why they would like this film in 1986. 100%, I get, and that's probably why a lot of people still have fond memories of it because they remember as a kid and blah, blah, blah. As a film viewer in 2023, this is a terrible picture. You think it's funny. These jokes are all old. All these jokes age poorly. And I don't mean age as in offensive poorly. I've heard every single one of these bits before.
Yeah, and we covered that during The Third Man, right? Your buddy was like, oh, I've heard all this shit before. Yeah, but it all came from this movie. Some of those jokes came from this movie.
Now, I will give Short Circuit this, and I'll give people a little background on what how we do these things. We watch a bunch of different films in order to, do this weekly, and I mixed up what day we were supposed to see Short Circuit, and I watched another film.
Which I did too, by the way.
I will give Short Circuit this. It doesn't remind me of a dozen different movies, unlike that next movie we're going to be talking about.
Which actually we would have been talking about last week.
Gleam in the Cube. Anyway, so the Fisher Stevens character, while wildly inappropriate, and oh wait, do you have the clip? We were going to discuss this, where he says where he's from.
Oh, there is a point where I don't have a clip of it, but Crosby's like, so where are you from? Like originally, he's like, oh, Bakersfield. And Crosby's like, no, I mean your ancestors. Oh, Pittsburgh. Like, which is actually, if it was an actual Indian person, a fantastic fucking joke. Because it's poking at the whole, assuming somebody who's not white is necessarily not from here, not from this country. But it's a white guy in brownface.
It's a white guy in brownface. Plus, the way Steven Gutenberg reacts to it, it's supposed to be a joke. What? You can't possibly be from where Bakersfield, whatever. I mean, I don't know. I did not care for that. And also, it begs the question, then what the fuck is up with the accent? Because presumably, he would not sound like that if he was raised in these places.
Well, it depends. See,
unless his family had really thick accents when they recently came over, but still.
I mean, if you like, there are a lot of ethnic enclaves in the United States where Little Italy, Spanish Harlem, there's a huge section of Jersey City that's mostly Indian people, and even the kids have an Indian accents because they're surrounded just by other people from that area.
Yeah. However, I suspect
that this doesn't actually have a good explanation because it was a white guy in brownface, and that was done specifically because Indian people are funny.
Indian people are funny, and also, we'll get into this, or we've already got into it since I guess Gleam in the Cube was supposed to be. Technically, we're recording this before we actually do that, but we're gonna whatever. The point is, notice also Gleam is the question of the Americanness of Asians or Vietnamese in that case. I had the same problem with this film. That seems to be something I noticed in a lot of pictures, that for some reason, filmmakers, and let's face it, white filmmakers seem to have a real hard time understanding that you can be Asian and American.
I don't think it's just white filmmakers, Joe.
Well, it seems to come up a lot. What black filmmakers are having?
No. I think it's white people.
Oh, okay. Well,
not just the filmmakers.
It just comes again and again. There are two things, and we're going off a little off topic here, but what the hell? There are two things I've noticed ever since the invention of the internet. Number one, I'm not the invention of the internet, but since I was able to get on the internet. Number one, how much people hate Jews. I did not know that. People really, really hate Jews. To me, they're just other white people, so I'm really shocked about that. And two, how many people in this country do not find Asian people to be Americans? And I don't know why. I don't know why that's such a hard concept of people. They don't see. I don't notice it for black people. I don't know it for Hispanics. But when it comes to Asians, for some reason, millions of Americans seem to find it inconceivable that they could be born here, even though literally it happens every day.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's just an aside. That's got nothing to do with, well, I guess it's sort of something to do with this picture. Since, according to, I guess, John Borman, whoever the hell the director is, I'm like, oh, I could find an Asian actor, but I guess they don't exist. So I'll hire this white man, have him put brownface on, go to India and do act, and so he can learn how to these strange people speak, because of course we have no Indians in America where he could talk to.
Could have sent him to Jersey City.
Oh, something to Jersey City. Well, this is 1986, so maybe there weren't as many in Jersey City.
All right. So this doesn't work.
I don't think it works.
But also, the staying power for it is partially number 5 himself. Never underestimate the power of a cute robot. And in his own way, number 5 is a cute robot. He's a robot with an expressive face, and we fall for that shit.
I completely understand. I can understand why kids watched this and thought they really liked this picture, because even though it's not, I guess technically not a kid's movie, it sort of is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see them being very much liking the robot. Sure, it makes total sense. But I'm a 56-year-old. I'm not a child.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this fucking movie, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. He ain't that cute. And I'm going to let all this shit go by. Anyway, what's up next?
Next week, we are talking about An Officer and a Gentleman from 1982.
I really, you've never seen this, right?
I've never seen this.
I really want your feedback on this movie.
Okay.
Even though this isn't your area of the armed services, there's some bits that should remind you of your time serving, I think. Well, we'll see. We'll find out. So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Ramacca. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
Hey, laser lips! Your mama was a snowblower!
That was very Robin Williams. I'm sorry.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Ramacca. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
Fuck your face, you stupid fucking software. Fucking load them all again.
Maybe if you hit it with electricity.
Yeah, Joe.
What is your favorite holiday song?
Have you encountered any bots in dating apps, and how could you tell?
What's the best type of place to live and why?
All right, Joe, you got any New Year's resolutions?
Is there any way to determine reality in a way that is independent of our senses?
Are there any foods that you used to love but have absolutely sworn off forever?